Well, we all know and love the NES version of Tecmo Super Bowl. It's sheer gaming brilliance. But have you tried the Super Nintendo version? And did you even know about the Sega Genesis version? Well, you know, there's a reason why I'm asking these questions. I've spent the last couple of days reading through as many video game magazines as I could find from fall 1993. Now, while I can find ads for these games, I can't seem to find any serious reviews. Now, I did find something in this issue of Nintendo Power, number 54 from November 1993. There was this pretty brief review. The review was overall pretty negative, actually, claiming that the perspective was pretty far removed from the action and that Madden felt better. And Nintendo Power didn't even have the courtesy to give Tecmo Super Bowl a rating. GamePro, meanwhile, had a big review of the Madden game, but nothing about either version of Tecmo Super Bowl. This is despite the fact that GamePro ran these massive ads for the game starting in August 1993. If you look closely, the ads are actually pretty interesting. There's this notice that the NES game sold out quickly, urging people to pre-order as fast as they can. Video games and computer entertainment, meanwhile, ignored the game completely. Anyway, all of this is kind of frustrating since I really wanted to see what reviewers at the time had to say about the 16-bit ports right when they came out. It looks like most of the major publications simply ignored the games. And honestly, I can understand why Tecmo Super Bowl's 16-bit release got a little bit lost in the mix. You see, there were a ton of football games that came out in the fall of 1993. There were so many of these games that it's actually kind of overwhelming today. Well, we're going to go through all of those games one at a time. There are some gems that you guys keep telling me about in the comments, and I look forward to going back and playing them again. But for the time being, let's stick with Tecmo Super Bowl. Now, the first thing that I need to tell you guys is that all of you were correct. The original NES game really is a lot more fun when you don't do the cheap nose tackle trick. And the New England Patriots really were an awful team, especially on defense. Our secondary gave up this ridiculous touchdown to go down 14-0 early to the Browns. We did make a great effort to catch up, though. This run by John Stevens tied the game at 21 in the fourth quarter. I stopped the Browns from getting a first down here. That left them with a long field goal with time running out. And thankfully it missed. My drive at the end of the game went nowhere and we went to overtime. I'm going to be honest with you, this game is awesome when it's close like this, and you won't believe what happened next. About halfway through overtime, a missed tackle by me opened things up for a big run for the Browns. I thought I'd blown it here. On first down and 10 with over 2 minutes left, the computer decided to kick a field goal. So let me repeat that. There were 2 minutes left in the game, it was first and 10 from like the 23-yard line, and we were in overtime. So why not call, you know, like a running play or two? Why try to kick a field goal right away? The field goal bounced off the upright and it was our ball. We drove the field gradually. I've noticed that I seem to have more luck running than passing. Steve Grogan was pretty bad that year. In the end, we were close enough with 14 seconds left for our own field goal try. And it bounced off the upright. We did manage to get an interception at the end of the game, but that was too late. Well, after all that, it's kind of hard for me to say that anything is better than the NES version of the game. I sure don't remember having this much fun with other games at the time, stuff like Madden. However, to be honest, I actually think the Sega Genesis version of Tecmo Super Bowl might be better. When you watch this, the first thing you'll notice is that the graphics are quite a bit better. What you can only notice when you play it, though, is that the controls are a little bit more responsive and the game is just a tiny bit faster. And it's a lot harder too. I seem to fumble all the time. By the way, keeping up with tradition, I decided to stick with losing teams to give myself a challenge. Otherwise, I would just choose San Francisco and pass to Jerry Rice every down. So I went with the Seahawks. The Seahawks were really bad in 1992, and of course, this game uses 1992 stats. The defense in this game is pretty vicious. If you guess the play right, the offense has no chance to do anything. It's actually pretty crazy. But on the other hand, I wasn't able to get the nose guard trick to work. I'm not sure if they fixed it in the Genesis version or if I just suck at the controls. Anyway, I decided in the end to play it right, and just like with the NES version, it was a lot more fun this way. Of course, Seattle's defense is really bad, and we weren't really close in the games that I played. I feel like the Genesis version is a little bit more realistic in that sense. It seems to me that the players are rated a little bit more realistically and that the balance between teams is more like it really should be. In other words, choosing the Seahawks while playing it on Genesis is like putting the game on hard mode. Even though the team was no good though, the game is just awesome. Everything feels really smooth and the controls feel natural. My only complaint was the halftime show, which was really lame. Give me the NES version's halftime shows any day. In all seriousness, I do think the Tecmo Super Bowl in the NES has the best halftime show in football video game history. And then you've got the Super Nintendo version. Now, if you go look on GameFAQs and similar sites, you will see people criticizing the Super Nintendo version of these games left and right. But the only way we can know for sure whether it's good or bad is by just playing it ourselves. So let's get into it. The graphics on the Super NES game are pretty bad. I'm really not a fan of the neon green field. In fact, I'd really like to know who made that decision. Here, let's compare them. This is the Super NES version. This is the Genesis version. And this is the NES version. So it's not like the Super Nintendo version really has washed out colors or anything like that. I don't know how to describe it other than that it just feels wrong. It feels like you're playing football on an alien planet. And it drives me nuts since I know what the graphical capabilities of the Super Nintendo were. Anyway, the other thing you should know is that the nose tackle trick works really well on the SNES version. I could get it to work every single time. After a while, I just stopped doing it out of boredom. There's also a pretty obvious glitch where you can run into the neutral zone before the snap on a punt. And it's not a huge deal, but it does show that the programming was pretty sloppy. But my biggest problem here is the controls, and it really is an issue. The problem is that the Super Nintendo controller has 6 buttons. This game really only needs 2. The Genesis controls are easy. B is pass and A and C scroll through receivers. B is pass on the Super NES and A and X cycle through receivers. Y, meanwhile, does nothing. It's kind of a problem when you look at the controller. It's more natural to push Y than A or X. Well, it took me a while to get used to that control scheme. This is one of those rare games where having more buttons is actually worse. And that's the joy of Tecmo Super Bowl, by the way. You don't have to worry about like complicated controls and other garbage like that. It's just a simple football game. Anyway, I got the Seahawks to beat the Chargers 14-0 on the Super Nintendo. And San Diego did not complete a single pass all game. That last part is a problem in my opinion, since this was my first time ever playing the Super Nintendo version. I mean, I shouldn't be able to dominate like that. Anyway, I'm guessing that this game will get harder as I keep playing, but to be honest with you, for the time being, I'm probably not going to give too much playing priority to the Super NES version, not for now at least. Well, it's actually not a bad game, but it has its flaws. The cutscenes take a second or two to load, which really slows things down. The halftime show is just boring. Don't watch it, skip it. The sound is also really lame. Well, in my opinion, the Super Nintendo version just doesn't compete. I really think the question of the best version of the original comes down to the NES version and the Sega Genesis version. And honestly, I don't know which one I like better. The Genesis version is a little bit faster and the controls feel perfect, at least to me. The NES one might be kind of rough around the edges, but it's really easy to feel immersed in the game. And after that crazy close game that I just had, I'm going to focus on the NES one for the time being. But I do have a feeling that I'll wind up liking the Genesis game better before all is said and done. Now remember, we're only talking about the original Tecmo Super Bowl 1. Yeah, I know that there are 2 sequels. We've got 2 more games to go, and we're going to get there, but we're not going to go too fast. I want to really enjoy it, and I think we should get to know these games a little bit better. Anyway, out of these 3 versions of Tecmo Super Bowl 1, which one do you like the best? Let me know in the comments.